Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
Hello and welcome to the WrestleTalk Stacked News and Stacked Reviews. I am Chopper P. Quinnell, and coming up today we've got the latest on several possible returns at the Royal Rumble in 2020, and we've got reviews of last night's episode of NXT and AEW Dynamite from Laurie and Luke respectively. Press the timestamps in the video description below to be taken to any of those right now. But before those reviews, let's do some news, and now that TLC is out of the way, eyes are turning to 2020 and the first WWE event in January, the Royal Rumble. Traditionally, the Rumble is the event of the year for surprise returns, debuts, and excitement, and also having the number 30 entrant getting beaten up and their spot taken if last year's show is anything to go by. An even greater spotlight may be placed upon the Women's Rumble match in 2020, given that there are so many opportunities for shocking returns, 3 of which seem a little more likely to happen, given reports that have recently surfaced. In an interview with Give Me Sport, Stephanie McMahon confirmed that Ronda Rousey will definitely return to WWE at some point. The Rumble will be a bloody good time to do it. Ronda Rousey will definitely be back, that is the plan, but as of now, I'm not sure where and when. But that's exactly what someone who knows exactly where and when they're returning, and it's at the Royal Rumble in 2020 on January 26th in Houston, Texas, would say. Ronda returning at the Rumble, winning it, and then facing Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 36 as a grudge match from last year's WrestleMania has been a wildly speculated theory by fans in recent times, and it would make sense story-wise. However, it is just a theory at this point. The emphasis placed upon the women's division when Ronda Rousey was part of it was drastically increased, with WWE even going so far as to do their first, and to this point, only all-women's pay-per-view Evolution. However, she hasn't been seen since WrestleMania 35, when she lost via a botched pin, reportedly going away to attempt to start a family with husband Travis Brown. As of the time of recording, there have been no reports on whether she is currently pregnant or not, which might slightly scupper plans of a Rumble return if she is. If she does indeed return at the Rumble, however, then perhaps it might shine a light on a couple of other returns in the same match too, as the focus on the women's division also increases. The Rumble is always a good time for injured stars to return and receive their big return pop, as it also adds to the stakes of the match itself. And there are 2 particular previously injured stars that could very well be making their return in that match too. Nia Jax has been out of action in WWE since WrestleMania 35, tearing both ACLs, ouch, but having undergone successful surgery for both. Ruby Riott, meanwhile, has been out with surgery being required for both her shoulders. Also, ouch. Interestingly though, Fightful is reporting that both women on WWE's internal injury list are down as being ready for return as of January 2020. Nia Jax is back at the WWE Performance Center preparing and training for a return. WWE's internal list has her as 1/2020. Ruby Riott internally was listed as the same date. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that all of these are just rumors, with Rousey's return confirmed but with no set date. However, it does seem likely that if a wrestler makes their return in January, it will most likely be in a Royal Rumble match. But also, don't be surprised if they all come back on a random episode of Raw to have a squash match against some local talent, because, as we all know, that's the real way to make a star in 2020. Isn't that right, Viking Raiders? And now let's head on over to Laurie for the NXT review.
We have a new NXT Women's Champion. Johnny Gargano returns to NXT TV, and there is just so much wrestling. Like, so much. Because if you like a lot of wrestling on your TV, watch NXT. Because this was an episode that was basically just all killer and absolutely no filler. And speaking of that globe-spanning reference to Club Biscuits that I used to take to school in my lunchbox, we started off hot on this episode of NXT with the inevitable clash between 2 former club leaders, Finn Balor and Adam Cole. Now, Finn's got the C crossed out in print on his Titantron, but it was the S that got kicked out of him in this match. Because after taking a super kick to the knee, which obviously killed any chances of him becoming an adventurer, but also meant that Balor played up that injury throughout the rest of the match. And commentary used it to put over just how hard it would be for him to hit the coup de grace on a dodgy knee, especially if Adam Cole keeps jumping out of the way, which he did at one point, causing Balor to collapse and take the last shot. But that wasn't the finish. Finn kicked out, which I think is a moment that showed just how into the idea of heel Finn becoming champion the crowd were throughout. Though, to be honest, if either Finn, Keith Lee or Tommaso Ciampa win the title, people are going to lose their minds. There are so many good contenders in NXT right now. Now, battling back from that near defeat, Balor nails a wicked clothesline, hits the coup de grace, and then goes for the 1916, which seems a little bit greedy and proved to be quite a lot greedy, because who should be on the ramp but good old Jonathan Wrestling. This distracts Balor long enough for Cole to hit a low blow, the last shot, and that is all she wrote until she writes the epilogue about Gargano beating Balor with a chair that he literally picks up from the point where he got injured himself and then sort of beats him around the arena with it, sending him to the back. Great stuff. Next up, Damian Priest and Killian Dane clashed in a rib-crunching affair where Dane was targeting the taped-up midriff of the former Punishment Martinez. But a Vader bomb onto Priest's knees eventually turns the tide, allowing him to hit the Reckoning and pick up a hard-earned win. We're then told that the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic will be returning in 2020 and the participants will be announced on New Year's Day. I'm imagining a lot of Franken teams this year. After that, Cameron Grimes won his hat back from Kushida in a fun match where both guys got to show off what they could do. I do though feel that in a post-Walter world, Kushida has gone from feeling quite special and wanting to sort of take on the best every show has to offer to just a guy who is just feuding over hats. I don't know, maybe the feud continues. Maybe they have a hat versus hair match and then hopefully the thing just gets put into a shredder. Io Shirai then took on Jobber du Jour Santana Garrett in a match designed to give Io some momentum back, which it mostly did. So that's fine. Not convinced by Santana Garrett, she's not really done much yet. After that, we got a Worlds Collide promotional match, which is taking place on Rumble weekend and sees NXT take on NXT UK and nobody else. So things really aren't looking very good for 205 Live at all. This match was between Pete Dunne of NXT and Travis Banks of NXT UK, which is pretty confusing because in my head, Pete Dunne is NXT UK as well. But regardless to say, it was a great match with a crazy finish as Dunne hits the Super X-Plex off the top, a vicious kick, and a bitter end to pick up the victory. Can't wait to watch him kick the crap out of his old mates for brand supremacy in January. Next, Dakota Kai tells Kathy Kelly that going through tables is painful and that she's got some staples, but ultimately, she beat Mia Yim and she wants the women's title. And then to cap off this all wrestling all the time episode of NXT, Rhea Ripley challenged Shayna Baszler for the NXT Women's Championship in yet another top quality women's match. This match pulled out every single shenanigan to whip the crowd into an absolute frenzy for the finish, and it worked. We had Duke and Shafir inevitably interfering. They then get sent to the back. The ref gets bumped. Rhea takes a DDT to a chair. The Kirifuda clutch is locked in. She battles out twice before getting it locked in again. She refuses to go down, and even that wasn't the finale, because that comes as a woozy Ripley is sat on the top turnbuckle with Baszler climbing up and getting in her face, but that gives Ripley the chance to get a headbutt in and an avalanche riptide, and she wins. We have a new NXT Women's Champion and a whole mosh pit of fans and backstage Pete rushed the ring to celebrate with Ripley. It was an amazing moment that was brilliantly built to through the past few months of NXT TV and all throughout this stellar match as Rhea Ripley refused to bow to the mounting pressure of facing Shayna Baszler. And now I just can't wait to see what they do with Ripley. So with that said, and taking all of the other awesome wrestling matches into account, this was a very high 4-star episode of NXT, and undisputedly good, if you will. It was just lacking that killer storyline angle or a mind-blowing promo to really tip it over into 5-star territory, because I'm not Dave Meltzer, I ain't just handing them out. But let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode of NXT TV and AEW Dynamite too while you're at it, because Luke is about to review that show right now.
Cheers, Laurie, but it's now time to get elite as I review the 18th of December 2019 edition of AEW Dynamite, the last show of the decade. Also, shout out to Mike Montero for bringing this sign with him. Heart emoji. The show kicked off with action as the Lucha Brothers took on Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. I don't know, make it say something like Happy Holidays. I love this new gimmick. This was a great match that told a really great story between Page and Omega, stemming from last week's blind tag by the Cowboy. They actually got on the the same page this week, but an errant buckshot took out Omega, allowing the Lucha Brothers to pick up the win. After the match, the pair argued, and the Busted Pac was on screen to threaten Omega, doing so by sneaking into the locker room of Michael Nakazawa. Omega tried to find him during the break, but was ambushed by the Lucha Brothers, with Paige making the save. I'm really digging this storyline, and it's nice to see Kenny Omega be Kenny Omega and not do his weird storyline where he's not the best wrestler in the world. After losing last week, Cody teamed up with Darby Allin to take on the Butcher and the Blade, with Allin saying he was doing this match because if they win, he gets a Fyter Fest rematch against Cody. This was another really good match which put over the Butcher strong, who at one point got in a cloverleaf on Allin that could not be broken up by Cody boots. In the end, Cody hit the disaster kick on the Butcher for an Allin coffin drop, and Rhodes hit the double springboard cutter on the Blade for the win. I really enjoyed this. We got a fantastic video package for Jungle Boy, and Awesome Kong quickly squashed Miranda Alice. The Nightmare Collective continues to get deathly silent reactions. After a quick interview with Jim Ross, Jungle Boy took on Chris Jericho in the 10-minute challenge. This was fabulously worked, telling the story that Jungle Boy wouldn't give up and actually got some decent near falls. As the seconds ticked down, Jungle Boy survived the walls of Jericho, and an overconfident champion demanded 5 more minutes be added. And after a series of amazing near falls from Jungle Boy, Jericho decided against it. He then sent a message to Jon Moxley at the top of the ramp, promising him a nice surprise on the New Year's Day episode of Dynamite. This one match made Jungle Boy one of the biggest baby faces on the show, even if Jim Ross struggles to get his name right. SCU cut a promo on the Young Bucks, and the Lucha Brothers made fun of Christopher Daniels for botching his spot in the Pentagon Jr. match, and upset Daniels walked away. Chris Statlander beat Britt Baker in an okay match to become the #1 contender to Riho, which will take place on the New Year's Day episode. Chris was really over, but the mood was sucked out of the arena when she was attacked by Brandy Rhodes and the Nightmare Collective. Tully Blanchard promised Shawn Spears that he will find him his Arn Anderson, and we got a tag team championship main event between the Young Bucks and SCU, which was predictably very, very good. There were lots of near falls, counters, and reversals, and SCU picked up the win. After the match, the Creepers surrounded the ring, and the Dark Order came out on stage. They said tonight wasn't a recruitment, it was an initiation, and the Creepers attacked the Bucks and SCU with their newest members, Alex Reynolds and John Silver. Kenny Omega, Cody, and Dustin Rhodes all ran down to make the save, with no Hangman Page, but Dark Order stood tall with the Bucks and shouted in unison, "We are one." And it would have been more effective if Brandy hadn't done the same deal twice on this show already. On paper, this should have been a fantastic episode of Dynamite, and in many ways it kind of was. The action was really good throughout, sometimes mind-blowing, but it wasn't a blow-away edition of the show, and do you know what? Not every show needs to be. But this week's AEW Dynamite was middle of the road. What was the Raw ratings disaster? Click the video on screen to find out more, and watch Ollie Davis and housemate Simon's review of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker over on Screenstalker. Thank you for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon pledge hammers, some of which you can see scrolling their way into my stomach. I've been Luke Owen, and that was wrestling.